So far, we have seen the literary structure and original meaning of Moses' record of Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 11 verse 9. Now we are ready to ask a third question. What are some of the ways we should apply this material to our lives today? In our usual fashion, we will approach the question of modern application by following the New Testament's description of the three stages of Christ's kingdom. We will look first at how the flood of deliverance and the resulting new order apply to the inauguration of the kingdom in the first coming of Christ. Then we will turn to the relevance of these matters for the continuation of the kingdom throughout the history of the church. And finally, we will examine how the New Testament applies this portion of the primeval history to the consummation of the kingdom when Christ returns in glory. As we approach the final chapters of Moses' primeval history in this way, we will discover that the New Testament extends Moses' original purpose for Israel into the three stages of Christ's kingdom, his work in the past, in the present, and in the future. Let's look first at the ways in which the New Testament views these themes in light of the first coming of Christ. In the inauguration of the kingdom, Christ accomplished a great salvation on the behalf of his people in ways that corresponded to the themes Moses emphasized in Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 11 verse 9. We can see these connections in at least two ways: the covenant which Christ mediated and the victory he accomplished. On the one hand, Christ brought deliverance to his people by means of a covenant that rescued them from the judgment of God. As we have seen, Noah played a special role as the mediator of a covenant, and Moses drew upon this fact as he explained his own ministry to Israel. In a similar fashion, the New Testament teaches that Christ is our deliverer because he mediated a new covenant when he came to this earth. All too often, Christians fail to realize that Christ came to this earth when God's people were under divine judgment. Because Israel so flagrantly violated the covenants of the Old Testament, in 586 BC, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, and the people of Israel never fully recovered from foreign domination. But the prophet Jeremiah predicted that God would redeem a people out of the fire of exile by establishing a new covenant in the future. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31, the prophet announced, "The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah." As most Christians know, the New Testament teaches that Jesus came to this earth as the mediator of this new covenant. Jesus himself acknowledged this role for himself when he spoke to his disciples at the Last Supper. As we read in Luke chapter 22, verse 20, he told them, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." So we see that just as Noah delivered from judgment as the mediator of a divine covenant, in the inauguration of the kingdom, Jesus delivered those who trusted him from judgment by mediating the new covenant through his blood, which he shed on the cross. In addition to bringing a new covenant, Jesus' earthly ministry fulfilled the theme of victory in holy war. Moses focused on the theme of holy war as a part of the new order after the flood. He established that the new order of the world required Israel to move forward into the conquest of Canaan, and he assured them of great victory. In comparison, listen to the way Paul described Christ's victory at the inauguration of the kingdom in Colossians chapter 2, verse 15. "And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross." As we see here, Jesus' victory in his first coming was not political, but spiritual. Jesus' death and resurrection initiated the defeat of the evil powers and spiritual authorities that ruled over the world in his day. His work of redemption made a public spectacle of them, much like Yahweh had made a spectacle of the primeval city of Babel and later had destroyed the great cities of Canaan. In this sense, Jesus not only delivered through his new covenant, but he was also victorious over the spiritual forces of darkness in his death and resurrection. Followers of Christ look to Christ's earthly ministry as the beginning of the final victory promised long ago in the book of Genesis.